little devotional thought today is going to begin with Genesis on the great temptation. Temptation always starts with a question. Genesis 3 verse 1. Did God really say you must not eat the fruit from any of the trees in the garden? The temptation he came to Jesus with, if you are the Son of God. Satan always wants to drive a wedge. Temptation always begins with that question that's going to drive a wedge. Secondly, temptation always makes God out to be a liar. Verse 4, you won't die, the serpent replied to the woman. Well, God said you would. No, you won't. Temptation always makes God out to be a liar. Thirdly, temptation always attacks the character of God. Verse 5, God knows that your eyes will be opened as soon as you eat of it, and you'll be like God, knowing both good and evil. In other words, God's holding you back. Temptation always makes you believe that somehow God doesn't want what's best for you. And you know that's not true. So, all right, temptation starts with a question. It makes God out to be a liar. It attacks the character of God. But temptation always goes through 4 stages. Verse 6, and the woman was convinced. All right, what convinced her? She saw that the tree was beautiful and its fruit looked delicious, and she wanted the wisdom it would give her. So she took some of the fruit and ate it. Then she gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it too. All right, what convinced the woman? Well, number 1, she saw. Don't hang out and look at things that bring temptation to you. Come on, guys, straight up. Don't be looking at websites that got girls on them. And, even on the news websites these days, you got to be careful. And even on the technology websites, you got to be careful. Just, okay, no, we're not going to go down the page. We're going to just hit the highlights. Don't look at that stuff. Whatever you look at comes in through the eye gate. She saw. Secondly, she wanted. See, once you start looking at something, then you want it. You begin to desire it. You begin to convince yourself that this is really good for you. Thirdly, she took it. She grabbed a hold of it. She laid hands on it. She took it in her hand. Now that's when you're really in trouble. Looking and desire are still things in your head. But once you reach out and take a hold of it, now as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. He's acting upon it. And the 4th stage of sin is the recruiter stage. Because sin is generous. She took some of the fruit and ate it. Then she gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it too. The 4th stage of temptation is always to get somebody else to join you in it. Have you ever noticed rebellion always wants people to join them? Have you ever noticed bad attitudes always want people to join them? Even Judas, when he criticized Jesus for the blessing of the anointing, he wants all the other apostles to join him. Sin is a recruiter. And you have to understand that 4th step. It always happens. Now, once that whole thing has transpired, you've seen, you've wanted, you've grabbed a hold of it, and now you've shared it. Now comes the consequences. And you have to understand this. The fruit of sin is a hard life. That's why when Christians tell me, oh, Pastor Sumrall, it's so hard to be a Christian. No. Proverbs says the way of the sinner is hard. Now listen to what it says in verses 17 and 19 in Genesis 3. And to the man God said, since you listened to your wife and ate from the tree whose fruit I commanded you not to eat, the ground is cursed because of you. All your life you will struggle to scratch a living from it. It grew thorns and thistles for you, though you will eat of its grains. By the sweat of your brow you will have food to eat until you return to the ground from which you were made. For you were made from dust, and to dust you will return. That's a hard life. Okay, God said you're still going to be able to earn a living, but it's going to be hard. Now, I've watched people all of my life. I've been your pastor for over 4 decades. And I watch people get off into sin. And you know what? Life gets hard. Sure, they still got food on the table, but it comes hard. Sure, they still have clothes on their back, but it comes hard. And then if you take it a step farther, it gets even harder. Look at Cain in chapter 4, verses 10 to 14. He kills his brother Abel, and God said, you're cursed and banished from the ground, which has swallowed your brother's blood. No longer will the ground yield good crops to you, no matter how hard you work. From now on, you'll be a homeless wanderer on earth. Yeah. People who get up into this where they're murdering people and New Testament murders, slander and tell lies about, they just become wanderers. And forgive me, there is no fruit that they can bear. Life becomes very, very hard. Now, beloved, please, when Satan walks up and starts making you think that God's not telling the truth and that God somehow doesn't want what's best for you, learn to not listen and move away. Get into the Word and read, because the consequences are not nice.